even violent, but certainly they were unhappy. And so getting rid of them and making it easier for people to shift spouses like they change their underwear, that's going to make people happier in the long term. And maybe it worked out for the moms and dads, though I'm skeptical, but it really didn't work out for the kids of those marriages. And I think that's what all of us should be honest about, is we've run this experiment in real time, and what we have is a lot of very, very real family dysfunction that's making our kids unhappy.
Hi, guys.
Welcome back, guys. Today, we're going to talk about no-fault divorce. Let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
No-fault divorce is very, very bad.
But I think the reform to no-fault divorce is far simpler. It should be reformed by simply ceasing to exist. Marriage is much more than a contract. It's a covenant.
There are a lot of problems with the current legal structure of marriage. I agree with that critique of the current legal structure of marriage. No-fault divorce is one of the worst things that ever happened to Western civilization.
I think she's entitled to nothing during these proceedings. And I think the problem is no-fault divorce.
I still believe that children need a mom and a dad and that divorce is horrible. But in today's legal system, my beliefs don't matter.
We got to get rid of no-fault divorce.
Well, Tim Pool, you might be getting your wish, because there are Republican lawmakers who are literally working on that type of policy as we speak. So conservative lawmakers in multiple states and on a national level are considering attempts to eliminate or restrict divorces in cases where fault cannot be proven. Right now, laws exist on or in all 50 states that allows people to end a marriage without having to prove that someone in that marriage did something wrong, like cheating or domestic abuse.
That's crazy.
The socially conservative, though, and often religious members of society have a different idea, right? So right-wing opponents of such laws are arguing that this deprives men of due process and it hurts families. In reality, oftentimes, couples that want a divorce don't want to accuse each other of terrible things. They just want to part ways and be done with it. And I don't really see how it's beneficial for society to force two individuals who no longer want to be in a marriage to continue being in a marriage, living under the same roof and being miserable with one another. But nonetheless, many of you have already heard claims from conservatives like Tim Pool who think that it's a bad idea to allow people to have these no-fault divorces. And you're about to hear more. Let's watch.
What we're talking about in the American divorce regime is called no-fault divorce. And no-fault divorce is, one, a contradiction in terms. You can't get it, you can't break a contract if there's no fault of anyone. And two, it's horrific for children and it's horrific for the spouses.
Marriage is much more than a contract. It's a covenant. To truly go your own way, alone and isolated, is to give up on your duty, your legacy, your ancestors, your bloodline, your civilization, your happiness.
Marriage is a commitment. That commitment is lifelong. There should actually have to be a really, really, really good reason why you are divorcing. And that's particularly true if you have children, because of course, marriage is designed as the fundamental building block of institutional society. It is the place where children are reared. It is the place where you produce children in the first place. And children require stability.
The traditional response to how you fix marriage is divorce is not allowed.
Okay, but
there's rare circumstances where like a guy is threatening to murder and beating his wife and his kids, and infidelity is one of these things.
No-fault divorce is an absolute tragedy. It is the catalyst for every other degenerate marriage and relationship problem that we have in society.
She sounds like a good time. Listen.
Okay, she sounds like a good time.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on it?
Well, it reminds me of that famous sentence that they always say, I'm not happy anymore. This is crazy because especially if you have kids, you can't just get up in the morning and be like, I'm not happy anymore. What you said last night to me or what you did yesterday, it hurt me, so I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. I know it's not a contract, but especially if you have kids, you have to be responsible for that. You have to work your relationship through. You can't just throw everything away and be like, I'm done. I'm going to move out and I'm going to file a divorce and I'm going to live my life. My kid just going to grow up like other kids, you know?
Yeah.
Which is really not true.
I have to agree. I feel like the whole no-fault divorce thing, it's kind of been proven at this point, I think, that people just take advantage of it. majority of the cases have usually been women taking advantage of no fault divorces, but I've even seen men taking advantage of it.
Hmm.
So it's definitely interesting to see. I understand that, the man and the woman, maybe they want to part ways, split ways, and if they both agree, and if, like, let's say they have a fault contract now, if they agree and they're like, hey, let's just split ways, I'll keep my money, you keep your money, I'll keep my assets, you keep your assets, we're grown adults, we can sign the contract, separate our ways. But it's just like, at this point, I think the whole narrative here for a lot of the conservatives, it seems, is that they want to have accountability. They don't want people just leaving because of what, like you said, I'm not happy anymore. I just want to walk out on this marriage and do my own thing, throw away all that accountability, go be with who
Especially
I
if
want to
there's
be with.
kids involved. Like you gotta
And
work it through. You can't just say, I mean, there's something if somebody is abusive
yeah,
or like the husband is
but
like addictive or the wife is addicted or like someone is doing something
but
really
here's
bad in
the
a relationship, yeah, but if it's just,
here's
oh,
the
I'm
thing
not in
though.
love with him anymore, or I'm not in love with her anymore, I want to move out, or this is
And
not
you know what?
working.
And I think I'm going to be honest. I even think that's okay if they're like, "Hey, I don't want to be involved anymore." That's fine. But guess what? If you were the one who was making all the money, or if you weren't making any money, you don't have to pay your ex. So, like, let's say the girl moves on, she will no longer pay any money, or she'll no longer receive any money from the husband, the ex-husband now.
Hmm.
And if she was making more money, I think because it's her fault for stepping out because she's not happy, since she's at fault on the contract, she has to pay him money if she's making significantly more. I think that's how it should work. Like if you're at fault, it puts accountability on you because
Hmm.
a lot of the times it's not that they're not happy, they just want to take advantage of the system.
Yeah.
They want to milk the money out.
Or they're like, they're gonna find someone like very wealthy to marry, and then
Yeah.
after a while they'll be like, "Oh, I'm not feeling it anymore," just
Yeah.
because to get like half of the money from that person,
Yeah.
which is, I think it's stupid. I think America is the only country that has this rule. I'm not sure about it because my country, it's not like that. It's just the alimony thing, but they're not gonna like be like whatever wealth you have to like divide it. Um that's not what it is. So,
Yeah. And I understand why they started this in America, however many years ago. It was because women could not get out of a divorce as like if they were in like a trapped situation and
mm,
they didn't have money. But now, things are different. Women make their own money. They're making good money, and in some cases way more than what men are making.
sometimes they make
So
more.
it's like I feel like women should actually be pushing for this, if anything, whether you're liberal, progressive, conservative. I feel like everyone should be pushing for this because it ensures accountability in the marriage. And you know what? If you don't want to get married, just don't get married. Just stay in a relationship.
That's it.
You know?
Yeah.
Let's keep going.
If you think you can't, just don't do it.
Okay, great. Go ahead and pass laws restricting divorce, and let's see how much the marriage rate drops from what it already is. It's already dropped considerably, but you're gonna make it harder for people to divorce. You're gonna have more people living under the same roof, having children out of wedlock, which is what conservatives don't want. Like the idea that a couple needs to prove that there's a good reason for them to divorce in order to be able to part ways is ridiculous to me. And this is coming from individuals who purport to want to protect freedom in America. But they're getting involved in literally the most intimate personal decisions that Americans can make about their personal lives. It is insane. In the case of Steven Crowder, by the way, he was bitter after it was exposed that he's pretty abusive to his wife. And yeah, she wanted a divorce. Who wouldn't want a divorce? And by the way, I just want to make clear, in that case, I wouldn't say that it's a no-fault divorce. It seems like there's some evidence indicating that that relationship was not a good one, potentially a very abusive one. And I hope that she's able to part ways with him and not have to deal with him ever again. Unfortunately, they have children together, but it is what it is. Now here's Senator J.D. Vance.
Let's pause it real quick.
It reminds me of Johnny Depp.
I was just about to say, I was like, well, here's the thing. First of all, we don't know anything about Crowder. I don't really know Steven Crowder. I've never really watched any of his content.
Same.
But and I really haven't done the research to know anything about him. But let's be honest here. We've seen situations where the husband is abusive, but the woman is actually even more abusive.
Abusive.
You know what I mean? In the case of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. So I'm not going to cast any judgment, especially when we haven't done our due diligence to, back up any of those facts that or any of the things she just said, I should say. But yeah, and I just think she's saying, the government getting involved. The problem is the government is already involved. They already have a default structure for if you divorce under a no-fault divorce. So whether she says she doesn't want government involved, government is already involved. And they're not going,
always involved.
they're not going anywhere. So the big difference here is now you're going to be accountable for your actions. And the only people who I think would be against a fault divorce are people who want to have no accountability. They're planning on marrying people who make more money than them and want to have options to walk out later and get that money back. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. So it's like they just don't want accountability. And, I could see instances where it becomes like, oh, he said, she said, oh, he cheated on me. Oh, she cheated on me. But there's no proof. But if you can bring proof, hey, there you go.
Yeah.
There's the fault.
Talking about increasing divorce rates back in 2021.
And this is one of the great tricks that I think the sexual revolution pulled on the American populace, which is this idea that, like, well, okay, these marriages were fundamentally, they were maybe even violent, but certainly they were unhappy. And so getting rid of them and making it easier for people to shift spouses like they change their underwear, that's going to make people happier in the long term. And maybe it worked out for the moms and dads, though I'm skeptical, but it really didn't work out for the kids of those marriages. And I think that's what all of us should be honest about, is we've run this experiment in real time, and what we have is a lot of very, very real family dysfunction that's making our kids unhappy.
There are a lot of myths about the divorce rate in America, and it's enraging because it just persists and no one ever really looks into it. So let's talk about what divorce in America really looks like. There was a period of time where divorces experienced a spike. So the divorce rate in the United States increased significantly from 1960, when it was 9.2 per 1,000 married women, to 22.6 in 1980. But by 2022, the rate had fallen to 14.5. Now, there's a reason for that. And it's because of the fact that, people waited longer to get married. I think that has a lot to do with it. So you don't get married when you're super young and you don't even know who you are yet. I think that had something to do with it. But the reason why there was that spike in divorces is because many of those marriages were in fact violent. There was domestic abuse within those marriages. And suddenly you have a situation in which women felt empowered to leave an abusive marriage. So before 1969, when California Republican Governor Ronald Reagan approved the country's first no-fault divorce law, yeah, that Ronald Reagan, he did that, women were often forced to stay in abusive marriages. Between 1976 and 1985, states that passed the laws saw their domestic violence rates against men and women fall by about 30%. The number of women murdered by an intimate partner declined by 10%, and female suicide rates also declined by 8 to 16%.
That's crazy.
And this impacted children as well, not in a negative way, in a positive way, because they're no longer stuck in a household where they have parents engaging in domestic violence, obviously. Kimberly Well, who's a professor at the University of Baltimore School of Law, says that without such laws, meaning the ability to have a no-fault divorce, it's hard to prove anything in court relating to a family because you don't have any witnesses. It's very difficult to get evidence to show abuse of children. How do you do it? Do you put your kids on the stand? And
I think it's pretty interesting how they're spinning this narrative.
Yeah.
That no-fault divorce is better than a fault divorce, because they're trying to pull statistics out, but a lot of statistics have also shown that marriages are the lowest that they've ever been. So of course the divorces are going to be lower as well. If marriages are lower, divorces will be lower.
That's true.
And the thing is, with fault divorce, I know that they just said, having witnesses and stuff, but at the same time, install a camera. Or just get a camera. Everyone has a cell phone. Everyone. If you're a wife who doesn't, and the thing is, they're talking about back in the past. Again, like we talked about this, right? I mentioned that in the past things were different. Women weren't really making money, but today everyone's working. So
Yeah,
I don't see the problem there.
I don't
I just
either.
feel like the narrative she's pushing, she's acting like we're still back in the 1930s, 1920s. Like
Yeah,
life's different now.
it's way different.
So I think that fault divorce should be a thing,
It
honestly,
should be.
because it brings accountability. And I don't know. I feel like they're just trying to find a way out of it.
Yeah,
So,
as usual. They always
and
do.
it's kind of sad that they're putting it on kids because when I look at the
It's
statistics
so
on
bad.
kids now and being in single parent households, we've never seen kids with the amount of drugs they're taking now. Like all kids are drugged these days, and behavior problems are worse than they have been before. And a lot of that I think can be contributed from the whole single parent household.
Yeah,
Since there's one parent there, I think they're actually more sad than they used to be, which is why you see kids who have anxiety and need to take antidepressants. Plus, you also have kids who, again, have like other issues, other psychological issues. And the funny thing is, she even mentioned better for women, but women who are over 40 years old, I think was the statistic, they're like 25% chance that they're on antidepressants. So it's just, I don't really know. But
I just feel like kids, they really need stability and they need both parents at the same
mhm,
time. Single parenting, it's very difficult for the parents and also on the kids.
yeah. And I
'Cause,
think I agree. I agree.
yeah,
I think it's better for the kids
it does.
having both parents. You
It's
need your
actually
dad,
way
you
better.
need your mom.
And it's hard, especially nowadays that they're doing like this 50-50 thing.
Yeah, it's very hard on
The kids
kids
has to be like here for a certain
getting
time and
dragged
then
place
go
to
back.
place.
It's hard on the kid because once you get used to the place that you are at, oh, it's time to move back.
Mhm,
It's just
yeah.
crazy. I wish there wasn't this much divorce going on.
I think it'd be better. It would force people to be more accountable, and it would make people take marriage seriously, which is what I think people need to do in this country.
That's true.
So let's keep going.
There were also huge implications for the economic well-being of wives, many of whom stayed home and didn't make money on their own. If they could not prove that their husband had been abusive or persuade him to grant a divorce, they would not be able to take any assets from that marriage or remarry. And that's according to a study that was published in the Quarterly Journal of Economics. But some people in the alleged Party for Personal Freedom, which is hilarious to me considering what they're trying to do here, basically want to go back to the dark ages. And they want to go back to an era where no-fault divorces were not allowed, where they were banned. Republican lawmakers have discussed increasing restrictions on no-fault marriage law, or I'm sorry, no-fault marriage laws, or eliminating them entirely in Louisiana, in Oklahoma, Nebraska, Texas. In January, for instance, the Oklahoma State Senator Dusty Deevers, it's a fun name, I guess, but he's a far-right Christian pastor who describes himself as an abortion abolitionist, introduced a bill that would eliminate no-fault divorces in his state. Deevers wrote last year in a Christian publication that making divorce too easy causes social upheaval, unfettered dishonesty. Let's pause for a second. You want to talk about unfettered dishonesty? What do you think people do when they're in an unhappy marriage and they can't get out of it? You think they're faithful to one another? You think they're honest with one another? You don't think they might want to live double lives because they're stuck in an unhappy marriage by force thanks to the state? Let me continue though. Lawlessness, violence.
Well, if you're unhappy and you lie and you step out on your marriage, then guess what? You're at fault. You get divorced anyway.
There you go.
And then all your assets go to the other partner. So what's the problem? You're getting divorced anyway. All you got to do
Exactly.
is step out on the marriage.
Just say it.
It makes no sense.
No.
Toward women, how laughable is this? War on men and expendability of children. To devalue marriage is to devalue the family. is to undermine the foundation of a thriving society. Unfortunately, this guy's not alone. There are others who feel this way. In 2022, the Republican Party of Texas added this language to its platform. We urge the legislature to rescind unilateral, no-fault divorce laws, to support covenant marriage, and to pass legislation extending the period of time in which a divorce may occur to 6 months after the date of filing for divorce. Louisiana Republicans have workshopped a similar proposal, and the Nebraska GOP writes on its website that no-fault divorce should only be accessible to couples without children. I don't understand how children living in a household with parents who can't stand each other and who do not get along is good for the children. It is not good for the children at all. And if it's abusive, if it's an environment that
If it's abusive, then guess what? Someone's at fault. There's a divorce.
So
you
we
move
can do-
on.
Exactly.
Like, come on. Like,
that is full of constant conflict, that's actually incredibly destabilizing for children. I don't understand how anyone can think this is a good idea. Federal lawmakers like J.D. Vance and House Speaker Mike Johnson, as well as former HUD Secretary Ben Carson, have also spoken out in favor of tightening divorce laws. At the Republican National Convention back in 2016, delegates considered adding language declaring children are made to be loved by both natural parents, united in marriage. Legal structures such as no-fault divorce, which divides families and empowers the state, should be replaced by a fault-based divorce. Again, I really do think that the outcome of this, should these types of laws pass on a state level, it's very unlikely to happen on a federal level. But if they do pass on a state level, I would venture to say that marriage rates in those states will experience a decline. Because if you know that it's gonna be more difficult to divorce your partner, should the marriage end up kind of falling apart, well, maybe you don't want to take that risk of getting married. And legislation banning no-fault divorce is, again, unlikely to ever pass on a national level. But if red states manage to enact these bans, couples in those states could be out of luck. Divorce laws generally include a residency requirement, which would make it difficult for people to even cross state lines in order to get a divorce. And luckily, so far, none of these efforts have succeeded. And Denise Lieberman, who's a professor at the university, at the Washington University School of Law, doesn't think they will, saying, quote, I do believe that the train has left the station. I mean, we've had no-fault divorce now for 50 years, but I didn't think the Supreme Court would overturn Roe v. Wade, which we had for 50 years, so I suppose we will see.
it's true.
So no one knows for sure. No one has the ability to predict what's gonna happen in these red states that seem to have lawmakers hell-bent on ending no-fault divorces. But I do think this story is something that needs to be emphasized, because while you have the Republican Party, speaking in a certain way, using certain rhetoric that appeals to ordinary American workers who are looking for an economic populist message.
Okay, we don't really care about the politics. The thing for me is like
You really
seriously, conservative, liberal, progressive, it doesn't matter. The big thing here is logic. And I think logically, what makes sense in our minds is you have a contract, you're married, you say until death do us part, we're gonna stay together. Someone's at fault if you try to break that up. If marriage and like I said,
Unless if they're abusive.
yeah, but that's the thing, and not at fault divorce. I think that's perfect.
Yep.
So
I think so too.
I think if you're at fault, then you should get divorced and move on.
I think so
And I
too.
think someone like this, I feel like this is more progressive than conservative, because women are making their own money now. If you catch your husband cheating, you don't want to have to pay them money. In fact, you might want them to pay you money. So if you catch them cheating
Exactly.
and you've worked a hard career, and I've seen it. I've seen women who've had to pay other men who didn't work, and the woman worked, and they're paying alimony, they're paying child support to the
That's
father.
crazy.
It happens both ways now because
It
women are
does.
making more money. So I feel like progressives should actually be pushing for this, or liberals, or whoever. I mean, it doesn't really matter the political base, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, it's very logical.
I think so too. Well, I don't know. Let us know what you think.
Yep. Let us know what you guys think in the comments, and until next time.
Until next time.